Alrighty then, it is chilly here today because it's 60 degrees. It ain't never no 60 degrees in October, but here we are. So what I'm going to do is can up raw pork. Go to your trusted source first. Don't count on your memory. I ain't counting on mine. And I write down how I need to do it. I'm doing pints. I need 1 inch of headspace, and it needs to process at my pound of 10 pounds for 75 minutes. This helps me to make sure I'm doing it correct. So go to a trusted source, but I'm also going to, bookmark, show you from the new book, Ball Book of Canning, and I'm gonna link a video for you. I have done barbecued pulled pork before, and it is fantastic. But let me tell you, it is so good. So I'm gonna link the video I did on that like 50 years ago, okay, or when this book came out, which is not that long ago. But anywho, I digress. Let's focus people. Okay, so I'm gonna link you to that video. If you wanna make a fantastic meal in a jar, this barbecued pulled pork is where it's at. So I've got all my things ready. I got, of course, my Pokey Joe. I've got my funnel. My jars are sterile. I need to get my lids, and I use ForJar because they don't fail me. Okay, and we're gonna get to slicing up our pork. And for that, I'm gonna wear gloves because it is raw pork. It ain't hard, it's canning. So I got my water hot in my microwave, and I drop my lids every other way so that they don't stick together when I go to remove them with my magic wand. So I'm sure that has happened to everyone. You go to pull out a jar, pull out a lid, and darn, they are all stuck together. So I put one down, one up. It ain't rocket science, but this will soften that compound so it'll have a better chance of adhering to the rim of my jar. So I'm gonna let those sit on a little hot pad, and I'm going to get to slicing up into chunks the different types of pork I have, and then we'll get them in the jars. Do not be afraid to can meats. Anytime we want a pork sandwich, I can either pull out the barbecued pulled pork pint that I did, or just like today, the raw pack pork. Add some barbecue sauce, some spices, and bam, we have pulled pork sandwiches. Very easy, and this meat will be so tender after this, it'll blow your mind. So I'm gonna get to slicing up my pork, and then we'll start filling our jars. So here's an example of the type of pork that I have, and I've been freezing them so I could accumulate enough to do a canner load. And thankfully, I have enough pork in pint jars, but more is better. So all I do is slice. Ain't that purty? Look at that. I remove some of the fat. We'll then go dump that in the marsh because my tide is going out. And then this is the size that I make. Little chunkamunkas. I drop them straight into my canning jar with the funnel, and you can usually get a little over 1 pound into a pint-sized jar. So I had one in there that had a brown sugar glaze on it. Ain't gonna hurt nothing, but it is full of fat. So I'm gonna get as much off of that as I can, and then I'm going to can this separately. For no other reason than I'll see how it went. It ain't hard, it's canning. This is one of the many things I dig about canning. The one that had brown sugar on it fit into a pint jar after I got the fat off. So it'll always surprise you how much you get or how little you get of something. So I still Pokey Joe. Okay, I'm not trying to cram this in so heavy, so hard. So now we have to wipe off. Let go. wipe off our rim. Let me get a paper towel. So even though we used our funnel, we still want to make sure we wipe off this rim. And every time that our jars come out of the dishwasher, whichever one of us unloads it, we feel around the rim because jars can crack and bounce into other things. So now we take our magic wand and get our lid. Then we get our ring. And it's supposed to be fingertip tight. And what works for me is the limp wrist method. So I hold my jar, put my fingers on it, and as far as I can turn it, bam. So we've got our next jar. Gonna debubble it with my Pokey Joe. I'm not trying to cram down to get a lot in there. That is not what I do. I need 1 inch of head space. And this will make a lot of its own liquid, just like happens when you raw pack chicken. So I'm gonna do the rest of these, making sure I use my Pokey Joe, the debubbler, get any air out of there that I can, get my lid on. Well, first I'm gonna wipe my rim, get my lid on, and then put my ring fingertip tight. And because this is raw pack and not hot pack, my canner is not on. So I'll set these into my canner, but that canner just has lukewarm or room temperature water in it. Canning is not hard, particularly when you raw pack. People will say, I just don't have time to do it. You can do that standing at your island with a video running. You know what I mean? Or watching something on television, and before you know it, it's done. It ain't hard. Can you add spices to this? Yes, yes you can. I do not like to add spices to anything because the canning process can really change that flavor profile. So I will add spices when I open a jar. I tend to be an ingredient canner. Hold the jar, limp wrist, fingers can't go any further. So there's not a big mess. I'm just gonna do a lot of sanitizing because this was pork, and I always sanitize with the things that I used to can, whether it's chicken, beef, whatever, vegetables. And I keep my canning supplies separate from everything else. So safety first. Alrighty then, I got 6 pints of pork, and the thing in the middle is a jar of water. This will hold 8 pints. We're just going with 7, but 6 pints of pork. Alrighty, my vent cover is up, so now I'll write down the time to start. My 10-minute of letting it have a steady stream out of that vent pipe. Nothing will happen with that pressure gauge while I wait for that 10 minutes of this to steam. So it's simply 10 minutes, not a long time at all, but my dial gauge will not change. Then I will set my weighted gauge and bring it up to my 10 pounds of pressure for my area. So our 10 minutes of vent time is up. Now all I'm going to do is put my weighted gauge on here. Now our pressure starts to rise up, and I wait till I reach 10 pounds of pressure for my area to start the 75 minutes process time. It's so not hard. So we have reached the correct poundage. Now I will start my 75-minute timer for the process time. So there are 3 of them. After processing their 75 minutes, don't touch them, don't do anything with them. Here's our other 3, and the one to the right is the one that had brown sugar in it. This is a beautiful thing. And if your rings are loose, I don't take them off until they've sat here 24 hours. Don't be alarmed, that's normal.